We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Heyam Beis Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 45b. This Daf is sponsored by Shalom ben Noim in memory of Moshe Leo ben David. Thank you for your sponsorship. If you'd like to sponsor an Amud or a Daf, see the description box below, and see the description box below to see how you can support this channel. The Braisa continues. Rabbi Shimon says, based on the pasuk in Yechezkel mentioned on the previous Amud, that again, Elim Merubin, let's say there's sufficient funds to bring the rams, to bring the requisite number of rams, many rams, but then there would not be enough for their ephah, for the proper amount of flour, for the accompanying mincha. So again, according to Rabbi Shimon, Yaviu Ayel Echad, it's better to bring one ram ve'efaso and its ephah, and bring the accompanying mincha properly, v'lo yikravu kulam below ephos, and don't bring them all without the proper amount, the ephos, the proper amount for the carbon mincha. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Hapar v'ha'elim v'ha'kvasim v'ha'soyer, the bull and the rams and the sheep and the goat. These are brought with the shtei halechem and shavuos. The par, the elim and the kvasim are brought as carbon olos, and the soyer is brought as a carbon chatos. So all of those karbanos, ein ma'akven es halechem, they don't hold back the lechem, that's the shtei halechem of shavuos. They don't hold back the shtei halechem from being brought. V'lo halechem ma'akven, and the shtei halechem doesn't hold them back. But halechem ma'akev es hakvasim, but the lechem is ma'akev the kvasim. If that's not brought, the kvasim, the sheep cannot be brought. This is referring to the kvasim, the two kvasim that accompany the lechem that are carbon shlamim. So the lechem is ma'akev the kvasim, ve'ein hakvasim ma'akven es halechem. But the kvasim, those sheep, are not ma'akev, they don't hold back the lechem. Divrei Rabbi Akiva, these are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Nanis, Rabbi Shimon ben Nanis says, lo, no, ki ela hakvasim ma'akven es halechem. Actually, the kvasim are ma'akev the lechem, they are ma'akev the bread. V'halechem eino ma'akev hakvasim, but the lechem is not ma'akev the kvasim. It's the exact reverse. Shekein matzino, that's what we find. Kishay Yisrael b'midbar mem shana. When Klal Yisrael was in the wilderness 40 years, karvu kvasim below lechem. They brought the kvasim even though they didn't bring the lechem, and so that's how we see that the lechem doesn't hold back the kvasim. And so afkan, so to over here, yikravu kvasim below lechem. These kvasim can be brought, these sheep can be brought without the lechem. Amar Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon says, halacha kedivrei ben Nanis. The halacha is like ben Nanis. Aval ein hatam kedvarav, but the reasoning is not like what he says. Shekala amar b'chumash hapikudim, because all of the karbanos that are mentioned in Sefer Bamidbar, those carbon musaf, karaf Bamidbar, those were offered in the wilderness. However, v'chala amar b'toras kohanim, but all of the karbanos which we're discussing now in the Mishnah, which are mentioned in Toras Kohanim and Sefer Vayikra, and karaf Bamidbar, they weren't brought in the midbar at all. So you can't give this reason that they would bring in the midbar the kvasim below lechem, but they didn't bring the lechem below kvasim. That's not true. They didn't bring any of them in the midbar. Mishabou la'aretz, it was only from when they came to Eretz Yisrael, karvu elu ve'elu, that they brought both of them. And so therefore, what's the actual reason? Mipnei ma'ani omer, why do I say yikravu kvasim below lechem, that the kvasim are brought without the lechem? Mipnei shaha kvasim matir nasatzman, because the kvasim, they permit themselves, when the applications of blood are done with the kvasim, that permits them. Below halechem, below kvasim, but the lechem cannot be brought without the kvasim. She'ein lo miyatirenu, without kvasim, there's nothing to permit the lechem. The lechem is permitted by the kvasim, and so without the kvasim, they cannot be brought. And the Gemara says, Tanu Rabban, and the sages taught in a brayso of Ikraftam ala lechem. It says you'll bring it with the bread. This is in Sefer Vayikra, all of the various karbanos that are brought together with the shtei halechem and shavuos. Chova ala lechem, this pasuk implies that it's an obligation that it has to be al halechem with the bread. It's ma'akev one another. But then the pasuk says, Shivas kevasim tamimim, it says Shivas kevasim tamimim, the 7 sheep. Afal pi she'ein lechem, and that sounds like that can be brought even without the bread. It's not ma'akev one to the other. Im kein ma'atam v'lomer ala lechem. Now, if it's not ma'akev, as it sounds like from Shivas Kevasim Tamimim, so what is the pasuk saying when it says Ala Lechem? Melamed Shalon Ischayvu B'Kevasim Kodem Shen Ischayvu B'Lechem. This teaches that there was no obligation to bring Kevasim before there was an obligation to bring the Lechem, meaning in the midbar there was no obligation to bring the Kevasim or the Lechem. Divrei Rabbi Tarfon, these are the words of Rabbi Tarfon, that's how Rabbi Tarfon understands the pasuk. And the Braisa continues, Rabbi Kiva says, Yachol hein kavasim hu amurim kan, hein kavasim hu amurim b'chumash hapekudim. One might think the 7 kavasim that are mentioned here in Sefer Vayikra are the same 7 kavasim that are mentioned in Chumash hapekudim in Sefer Bamidbar, part of the Karban Musaf. Maybe it's all the same, it's not separate karbanos. Amrit, so we say as follows, Kishatam magia etzel parim ve'elim. When you look at parim ve'elim and you look at the numbers of parim and elim that are in Sefer Vayikra versus Sefer Bamidbar, Ein on Hain, it's different numbers, it's clearly not the same. So Ella halalu boin b'glal atzmon v'halalu boin b'glal beglal lechem. Rather, the ones in Sefer Bamidbar, they come on their own. The ones in Sefer Vayikra are coming together with the lechem. Nimsa, and it comes out, Masha Omer b'chumash hapikudim, Karav b'midbar, whatever was said in Chumash hapikudim in Sefer Bamidbar, that was brought in the Midbar. Umasha Omer b'Torahs Kohanim, and those karbonos which are in Torahs Kohanim, which are in Sefer Vayikra, so lo Karav b'midbar, those were not brought in the Midbar. The Gemara says, "V'dilma parim ve'elim lav inu hakevasim inu ninu." But maybe we should make a distinction in the pasuk. The parim and the elim, those are not the same because there's different numbers, so they're different karbonos. But maybe the 7 kevasim mentioned in Vayikra is the same 7 kevasim that are mentioned in Bamidbar. And the Gemara says, "No, midahani ishtanu," from the fact that these are different. Hani nami da'achrini. So these also are going to be others. They're not going to be the same. But the Gemara continues, "Uparim ve'elim imayde ishtanu." But even with regards to the bulls and the rams, how do you know it's different karbonos? Dilma hachi kamar achmana. Maybe the pasuk means to say as follows: "Iboy par ushnei elim likarev." If he wants to bring, if they want to bring 1 par and 2 elim, they offer that. And iboy shnei parim v'ayel echad likarev. And if they want that it should be 2 parim, the reverse, 2 parim and 1 ayel, that's also fine to offer. And so therefore maybe that's what the pasuk means, and maybe it's really the same karbonos. And the Gemara says to that cannot be true. Midishtani sidron, from the fact that the order is switched around is different. Shma mino acharinin, and we see that these are other karbonos. And we will note over here, even though the Brisa says Rabbi Akiva Omer, Rabbi Akiva says, it sounds like Rabbi Akiva is arguing with Rabbi Tarfon, but the Shita Mekubetza says, Tevos Rabbi Akiva Omer Nimchak, the words Rabbi Akiva Omer should be erased, and really Rabbi Akiva's statement really is fundamentally the same as Rabbi Tarfon, essentially would be a unanimously held opinion. Again, the same basic idea that which is said in Torahs Kohanim was not offered in the times of the Midbar. And the Gemara continues with the 2 dots. The Mishnah said, "Halechem ma'akev es hakvasim." This was the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, that it's the lechem, the bread that is ma'akev, that holds back the kvasim. The lechem is what's absolutely required. And the Gemara asks, my time with Rabbi Akiva, what's the reason of Rabbi Akiva? Gamar yihiyu mitihiyena. He learns the word yihiyu from the word tiyena. It says the word yihiyu by the lechem. The question is, what is yihiyu going on? We understand that yihiyu means a requirement. Rashi explains, Gamar yihiyu mitihiyena dechsiv belechem ushnei chavasim. It's written by the lechem and shnei chavasim. V'heinef hakohen osam alechem habikurim tenufa yiyu lashem lakohen yiyu havoya. Again, the word yiyu means havoya. It means in its same state. It's a requirement. But we don't know what it's going on. Is it going on the kvasim or is it going on the lechem? Havoya, what is the havoya going on? O alechem, o akvasim, is it going on the lechem or the kvasim? Hilkach gamar yiyu misoles tihiyena. So Rabbi Akiva learns it from the word tihiyena. Another pasuk says soles tihiyena. Mahi havoya alechem. Now that's going on soles tihiyena. That's going on bread. Afi havoya alechem. So too over here the havoya goes on the lechem. And so again, back in the Gemara, Gamar yiyu mi tihiyena, he learns the yihiyu from tihiyena, ma'alahalan lechem, just like over there it's the lechem, afkan lechem, so too here it's the lechem, and therefore it's the lechem that is required. Uvenanis, now Venanis, who learns the opposite, Gamar yihiyu yihiyu, he learns yihiyu. From another time it says yihiyu, it says yiyu ola lashem, ma'alahalan kevasim, afkan kevasim, just like over there it's talking about sheep, so too over here it's talking about sheep. The Gemara asks, "Uvenanis nami neilef mi tiyena." Why doesn't Benanis learn from the word tiyena? Ma'alahalam lechem afkan lechem. Just like there it's bread, so to here it's bread. And to that the Gemara answers, "Don in yihiyu mi yihiyu." We learn yihiyu from yiyu, that's like the same word. Ve'in don and yiyu mi tiyena, we don't learn yihiyu from tiyena, that's a different word. But the Gemara asks on that, my nafkamina, what difference does it make that it's a different word? Hatana de Rabbi Yishmael, it was taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael. V'shav hakohen uva hakohen, this is talking about by tzaras, we say, it says v'shav hakohen uva hakohen, we compare the returning of the kohen to the coming of the kohen, and those are totally different words. Zehu shiva, zehu bia, this is the returning, this is the coming. You see that you can make a gzeira shava, even though the words are not exactly alike. And the Gemara answers to that, Hani mili heicha delek or the damile. That's in a situation where you don't have another word that's a better comparison, that's more similar. Aval heicha diika the damile, but we have a situation where you have a word that is a better comparison that's more similar. So mida damile alfinan, it's better to learn from the one that's more similar, and that's why he prefers to learn yihiyu from yihiyu. And the Gemara continues and asks, Rabbi Akiva nami leilif yihiyu mi yihiyu. Rabbi Akiva also, why doesn't he learn yihiyu from yihiyu? And the Gemara says to that, don in davar shematana lekohen, he learns something that is a gift to the kohen, mi davar shematana lekohen, from something else that's a gift to the kohen. Lafuke hani de olos ninu, he's not going to learn out from yihiyu where it's an ola, and there's no gift to the kohen. And the Gemara continues and says, if you want, we can explain the machlokas Rabbi Akiva and Benanis as follows. Bikra gufe kamiflagi, they're arguing, and the pasuk pasuk itself. The pasuk says, Kodesh yiyu laHashem laKohen. Rabbi Akiva holds, is ezehu davar shekulo laKohen. What is something that is entirely to the Kohen, because it says laKohen. Haveyomer ze lechem, lechem is given totally to the Kohanim, and therefore the pasuk is talking about lechem. That's Rabbi Akiva's view. Uvenanis, and Venanis responds, Miksiv Kodesh yiyu laKohen. Does the pasuk say Kodesh yiyu laKohen? That's not what it said. Kodesh yiyu laHashem laKohen. It says the word laHashem there. It says Kodesh yiyu laHashem laKohen, to Hashem and to the Kohen. Ksiv, that's what's written. And it means Ezu davar shemiksasu laHashem umiksasu laKohen. What is something which is partially to Hashem and partially to the Kohen? Haveyomer elu kvasim. So that would actually refer to the kvasim, which partially is to Hashem on the Mizbeach, partially to the Kohanim. For Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Akiva responds to that, Miksiv Kodesh Yu Lashem Vila Kohen. It doesn't say, is it written Kodesh Yu Lashem Vila Kohen? That would mean some goes to Hashem, some goes to the Kohen. That's not what it says. La Hashem La Kohen, it says La Hashem La Kohen. And what's the interpretation of that? Kidder Rav Huna, that's like Rav Huna, the Amar Rav Huna, because Rav Huna says, Kono Hashem, Hashem acquires it, Unisano La Kohen, and then gives it over to the Kohen. And Rashi explains, Kono Hashem unisano lekohen means the mishulchan gavoa kazachu, means the Kohanim are getting it from shulchan gavoa, from the table of the Almighty. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Hakol modim, everybody admits, everybody agrees, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Vav Amud Aleph.